Hello friends and welcome back to the channel where today I want to spend a little bit of time talking about raids. Have some footage running in the background that I recorded from this past week. So raids started this past week for everyone for the first time, and by the time this video goes live the week should probably be over. And I kind of wanted to let the entirety of the experience play out before I kind of like recorded my thoughts on it. Before I begin, I do want to say that, you know, all this feedback I've already shared with the team. Some of it I've even put up on social media. This is all based on my personal experience. If your experience with the raids was different than mine, that's absolutely fine. Just wanted to kind of get that disclaimer out of the way. I want to start by saying that when I originally tested raids at the Player Summit in Vancouver way back in October, it was a lot of fun. That was also a much earlier version of the game mode, so it's not too surprising that what we got on the live server turned out to be quite different. And then when I did that stream the other day with Bitter and MSD, where we went through a raid like on the beta server, that was, that was a blast. It was so much fun. Having said all of that, I don't think I enjoyed a single moment of my raids experience this past week. And my absolute biggest issue with how raids are implemented on the live server could be summarized by saying that when it comes to the champion pools and the raids boosts, it is very clear that there are correct champion and boost combinations to use, and if you happen to select anything else, you're going to have a very, very bad time. You won't be hitting the damage cap on any of your attempts, which means that, starting on day one, you are already going to have to be spending resources or units on extra revives, and you're going to have to do that every day in order to finish the raid, or you're going to end up screwing your entire battle group and maybe your entire alliance. I went into my raid this week with the Tactician role because I have this 7-star Venom. I've never assigned him in war. He's at rank 2. It seemed like a really good option for me. However, what I didn't know is that only one of the 3 Tactician boosts are actually designed to work for him. And, the game obviously doesn't tell you this, and clearly I had no idea because this was the first time for everybody, right? So to me, the boost that I used looked like it would be fine, but it definitely wasn't. And this simple act of choosing one boost over another, completely ruined the week for me. I didn't hit the damage cap a single time in any fight that I did the entire week. I had to buy probably, 20 or so extra revives on top of the free ones just to get through all of our 3 bosses on our lane. So to me, if a given champion at an appropriate rank and rarity is unable to hit the damage cap in the allotted time frame, despite having maximum roll charges and skillful gameplay, then clearly something is not right. Because next month, I'm not going to experiment with another champ or a boost. I'm going to just say screw it and go with the most broken champ that I have for my role. If it's Tactician, you want to use Hulkling, and then if you're Assault, you want to use Hulkbuster. Don't even bother using anybody else because it's not worth it to experiment, because if you experiment and you get something wrong, you're screwing yourself for the entire week. I think one way to fix this concern is to offer a champ and or roll boost swap after the first boss. So if you go into the first boss and you're like, wow, this really sucks, I really like a mulligan here, you can do so. You can pick a different champ, you can pick a different boost. I feel like raids is a mode that should encourage experimentation with your attackers, with your attacking champs, with your attacker boosts, but the punishment here for choosing poorly is being stuck with that choice for the entire week, and that really, really sucks, plain and simple. All right, now, number 2, again, kind of focusing on the champion pool, let's talk about damage over time. So any champion that relies on damage over time effects for a significant portion of their damage output is essentially useless in this mode. So I've got the pool here up on screen for each role. Let's go ahead and eliminate all of these champs. So right here, that's 9 champs, 20% of all champions available that are pretty much unusable in raids. And by the way, the most puzzling champ out of all 3 of these roles is Dr. Voodoo, who not only relies on dot for a lot of his damage, but his dot type is poison, and half of the raid bosses are immune to poison. So he's doubly useless. On the version of raids that we tested back in Vancouver in October, it seemed like dot effects kind of scaled equally with your hit damage. Like your hit damage in raids goes up pretty high and you're hitting for like 6-digit basic attacks, right? But on the live server, the dot effects aren't scaling at all. You know, on the beta that we tested it in Vancouver, I think the health pools for these bosses were a lot lower, so it maybe seemed like or felt like dot was more powerful. But either way here, dot needs to be boosted a little bit, and my solution here would be like a global boost to dot effect potency that's scaled either with the roll charges available when you go into a fight or your raid fervor. And it definitely doesn't have to be overpowered, because I think if you made dot effects scale the same way that hit damage does, dot champions would be way overpowered, and you definitely don't want that. But you don't want them to feel completely useless. The dot output for any champion who is reliant on it has to feel at least somewhat appropriate. Also, having said that, I would probably remove Voodoo from the pool entirely. He's completely useless. My last thought on the champion pools is that I think that there was an expectation kind of going in that each champ in each role was going to be at least usable with the right boost combination, but I feel like right now that's not even close to being true. As with any mode or new piece of content, people are going to learn who is good and who to avoid. To that end, I think a lot of people are going to take a similar approach that I'm going to next month and just use, the most busted champ and just forget about everybody else. But again, I feel like if you're the team, you probably want people to experiment with attackers, experiment with different boosts. But until they're balanced correctly and it doesn't feel like there is a correct option for every role, I don't think that's going to happen. So I feel like we can probably get there in the next few iterations of the mode, but we'll see what happens. Okay, issue number 3. I really, really don't like how your attackers are locked in the raid for the entire week. And similarly, I also don't like how you cannot use Alliance War defenders as your raid attacker, where you can use your AW defenders as attackers in other game modes. So this is a mode where you want to use the best champ you have available for your role in order to consistently hit that damage cap and avoid paying for extra revives. However, for the majority of players, I think that locking one of their best champs out of other content entirely for a week straight is very undesirable. And I think this is especially true for alliances in like the higher tiers of Alliance War that assign war attackers, because now planners are going to have to account for 30 additional champions being unavailable for the attack phase. And, some alliances might be affected differently than others, of course, but I feel like that's a really undesirable outcome. So my solution here, very simple. I think that champion usage in raids should function exactly like Incursions does. Champions that you use in Incursions are unaffected by any other game mode, and I think that's the way it should be for raids as well. We're only talking about one champion here. We're not talking about a team of 3, a team of 5. It's just one champion. I feel like that's a pretty fair solution. All right, big issue number 4. I'm combining several things into one issue here because I really feel like these are a bit of low-hanging fruit, probably very easy to adjust for next month's raid. But in summary, there absolutely needs to be some tuning adjustments made to some of these boss fights, and I want to call out 4 things in particular. The first is Maestro. Maestro's degen is way too strong. If you mistime a single special one, you are dead, guaranteed. And dying from one mistake in a game mode where you only get like 2 free tries a day feels really, really bad. The second one, the Pierce effects on fights 2 and 3 need to be tuned down. This is very painful, especially for boosts where you need to bait out heavies, or for the mission on some of the boosts on some of the boss fights where you need to finish your combo. Because doing so leaves you open for a blocked hit or 2 before you can kind of back off. So it almost feels like you are being forced to take blocked hits with that incredibly strong Pierce effect active, and your health is just chunking down through no fault of your own. Third, Ultron needs to have a permanent heal block applied to him. And, I think this is partially to counter his SIG ability, but more importantly, I think his regen at 50% and I think is it 20 or 25% is far too powerful, and there exists a strong likelihood that he will be stun immune when the regen triggers, which means you cannot stop it, and he's just going to tick back up. And if he ticks up, you think every 10% that he ticks is another revive that somebody has to spend getting him down again. I think if you heal block him permanently, you can probably leave his Sig ability in place. Like, it will reduce the durations of some of those energy-based dot effects, but he won't be healing up from them, so I think that would be fine. Last one, also with Ultron, like, the fight in general, like, it kind of sucks, right? His mission requires you to alternate special attacks, so it requires so many bars of power to ramp up in the fight, and on top of that, the rhythm of the fight is frequently disrupted by having to avoid his evade. So one solution here, I think, is to increase the fight timer just on Ultron to 5 minutes or more. Not really sure that's a good solution, however, because with the Pierce effects in place and the Fury effects in play, that's still like a long time to survive just from chip damage. So I'm not really sure what else you can do here, but aside from maybe swapping out the mission for something else entirely, not really sure how likely or possible that is. But the fight is not fun at all for me. My last big issue, I think I'm on number 5 now. Last big issue is with how the revives are distributed to players. So it feels for me very awkward to have to go into the store every day and purchase them manually. And I feel like delivering them via the mail system or, have players claim them from a calendar is much better and much less awkward. I do understand that having them in a store allows a player to kind of better work around the inventory cap because you only get 2, they expire very quickly. But I still think this kind of warrants a change. This might be like a longer term thing. I'm not sure this is really necessary for next month, but maybe in the next couple months this could be looked at for sure. The last kind of thing I want to talk about with regards to my raid experience is just to point out how differently I felt about doing raids this week on the live server versus doing them on stream the other day on the beta server. So I said earlier, I had so much fun doing them on stream with Bitter and MSD, and for me, hanging out like on a call with a couple of friends, knocking out our 3 bosses in a couple of hours is like the ideal raid experience for me. And it really reminded me of when I used to play Borderlands with a couple of my friends. We'd log on and just play for a few hours, farming a few of the big bosses for some extra loot. And while I understand, Kabam's desire to want to see players log in every day, right? I also feel like the majority of players who are going to be participating in raids in this game mode to begin with are probably doing so already. They're logging in every day, multiple times a day, and I'm skeptical that allowing players to do a raid like Bitter and MSD and I did on stream the other day would really be detrimental to anything like that. So we'll see where that goes. I'm not really sure that that's actionable at this point, but I would really like to have that experience back again, I would say. Now, I know that I spent pretty much this entire video talking about my problems with raids, and I did offer some solutions here and there, but I really think that with a month of downtime in between each raid, there is a strong possibility that some of these issues could be resolved, at least in part, by February's raid. This is a new mode, I understand, and while I really didn't enjoy it, and I do still think that it could have used a bit more time cooking before it was released on a live server, I also think that the foundation is there for a very fun and very worthwhile game mode. So there's a lot of opportunities in place there. Let's hope that some of the problems can be resolved by next month. We'll see. So yeah, that's really I think all I wanted to cover about it. Let me know what you thought about your raids experience. If you enjoyed it, leave me a comment below with your role and the champion that you used for your role. Really interested to see what people ended up going with. If your alliance is planning on skipping raids entirely from now on because the experience was poor, I would also like to hear from you, so be sure to leave me a comment below with that. And as always, thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.